Hello everybody, GWS here again with something that really opened up my eyes a lot to I've known this has been a problem, but we got some serious problems we have to solve, and I have a couple solutions that long term America needs to think about, and I'm talking about America as a whole. And part of that too is based on a lot of my discussions today. My discussions today weren't politically motivated, which allowed me to see how much people are really in a bubble there. And I mean, you can't help but be in a bubble. You have Southerners who are, you have different regions who have their customs. They don't know about each other, don't understand each other. That's perfectly fine. You're going to have that. You can't help that. That's probably a better way of putting it. But I encourage people to watch Laura Loomer. She has a video where she goes into the NYC Public Theater and she's witnessing this mock Trump assassination again. After the Virginia shooting, they're holding these mock assassinations, these plays. And they kick her out. They have her all the way outside the property. And it's getting unbelievable there. You look at what's happened in New York City. You've had, cops pretty much choking people to death there over cigarettes. You have constant videos of people recording themselves being harassed nonstop walking through the streets of New York City. Some of it's politically motivated, some of it's not. You've had Trump supporters who walk through New York City in a Trump hat and they get slapped around, they get their hat knocked off. It's just, New York is the broadcasting entity to the world. Pretty much through them, you get the worldwide perception of the United States. And this is not who we are as a country. Where we can't tolerate other views, we're just going to be so hateful. You've had Kathy Griffin with the headless Trump pose. You've had all these just sickening signs of hatred. You see it in the news. You see it everywhere. And it's just, anybody who lives in the city has to be exposed to this, whether they are conforming to it or they're responding to it. And most of them, unfortunately, yes, most of them are just bowing to it, caving into the hatred, being a part of the problem. This is not the New York that existed just, 20 years ago, before the towers went down. In the 90s, New York was a beautiful place. They were cleaning up from a lot of hardship they were dealing with from 1970 through about 1990. They had the mafia just running things, and then they were finally got that under control. The city was doing awesome, and then 9/11, the whole country, everybody, we surrounded New York, and we gave them so much love, and they gave their love back and loyalty. It didn't matter who was president, what party they were, what politics were, what your position on national health care was. It didn't matter because we were all in the same country. But now, the hatred is unbelievable. Don't forget about, too, the shouting for killing cops in New York City. And I'm talking massive chants Not just from people in the streets, people shouting out the windows of apartment buildings, and just a few brave souls recording it. It's horrible. And really, it's New York City has a huge problem with corruption. You saw that with De Blasio, but it's been brewing for a while with Bloomberg, all that. So, as a libertarian, I don't like having the proposal, but we got to talk about starting to omit New York City, New York sections thereof, etc. Just omit them from the country. Let them have their own country. If they want to keep their wealth, okay, fine, whatever. You have your wealth, but if it transfers over, it transfers over because of lack of business stuff. But you could do that. Just let California secede. That's what it's coming down to, because you look at just the vitriol, the differences in political opinion. I don't say it out of spite, because honestly, you look at liberal values, it's a perception. People who live in these areas have a different view of the world. They look at different news, they talk to different people, they have different idols, they have just a different perspective on morality, how society should be structured, what individual responsibilities are, what moral responsibilities are, your role as a parent, your role as a man, your role as a woman, etc. Liberalism, it used to just be two different ideologies with roughly 50% of things in common. Now it's just liberals and conservatives can't talk to each other anymore. And it's just going to get worse. And there's a lot of things I like about Trump, but the one thing that he is not able to do, it seems, perhaps by no fault of his own, is bring those groups together. And he he at least shows the desire, but ultimately, liberals just aren't seeing things the way he sees them. So we need to have a serious discussion about secession in this country. Legitimate, non-extremist, non-violent, peaceful breakup secession where we go our separate ways. And how the country split and what's done with the resources, and you know who keeps what wealth, who has what rights, how we're going to handle disputes, how we're going to handle currency, all of that could be hammered out in a constitutional convention where we can iron out some details of, like, how much of New York, because you can't give the whole state, because a lot of upstate New York is conservative, and they are ultimately going to have problems, and we're going to get conflict. So it's got to be something like southeastern New York or something like that, and then you just leave an avenue for people who want to go to the other New England states, or maybe even include some other New England states in the secession. If you want to put Vermont in there, you want to put Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey. There's different ways you could look at how a secession could be. And same thing with California. Like how much of the Pacific Northwest is going to go. Um, I'm sure if given the opportunity, people in the Pacific Northwest would move to California. It's details for people smarter than I am to come up with. But what I'm saying is we need to have a serious adult conversation about going our separate ways so that they can have the policies they want, we have the policies we want in places like where I'm from, Arizona. So there's that. Another thing that you could do if New York wants to be part of this country, because we can't leave things how they are. New York is just getting too bad. The violence is getting out of control with the left. The rhetoric is I'm for free speech. If you want to scream about how Trump is horrible, I don't have a problem with that. But when it comes to shootings, mass assassinations, beating people over the head with bike locks, stomping them on the ground, and preventing people from coming to aid them, it's gone too far. When your speech is inciting this kind of hateful violence, too much. But one other thing you could do with New York, I don't know how this could be done, but you simply ban public markets. That's right, the S&P, the NYSE, and all the other public markets. You ban public shares. If you're going to share ownership of a company, you have to explicitly name the owning parties. So there's no more dividends, stocks, all that. Now, bonds are another issue because you kind of have to have those to expand the currency, but the problem is a lot of New York's money comes from this, and this is an abstraction that disconnects so many people. It does not benefit this country to have publicly traded companies. It does not benefit the country. All it does is it fuels the same kinds of speculation that lead to crashes. And then when you have crashes, here's the thing. It's people look at the crash. The crash is not bad. The crash is a corrective mechanism in response to speculation. The crash is the market correcting itself, saying you are not worth this amount. You are freaking delusional. So the market's going to tank, and then people are going to invest their money in things that are demand. The problem is the speculation that leads up to it. Because when you have that kind of false market, what do you get? You get the other sectors who are not growing. The sectors that are in demand have less actual demand because of all the speculation. And the speculation is fueled by public trading. There's other things that create bubbles too, but there's no bigger creator of bubbles than a publicly traded company where the success or failure of that company depends on just purely how much is invested in it. Nothing to do with its production, or a lot less to do with its production. And it's money creating money, and that's the problem that we have. Because when you have these abstractions, people get out of reality and they start thinking in terms of these abstractions, and there's no substance behind it. And I know it's far removed from this particular video to say that, but that's a big problem with New York. Is it's just full of this wealthier, entitled, liberal mindset where when people don't get their way, it's a weird connection, I know, but New York City is a money city. You can produce anything you want. You don't have money in New York City, you're pretty much useless. It's why it's one of the most expensive cities to live in the world. Not just the US, the world. It's probably even top 5 most expensive. And that's considering that the rest of the country is relatively cheap by first world standards. But that's pretty much what there is to that. You either can get rid of these public trading, get rid of the abstractions, go back to an economy of substance where what you produce means something again. Not where you went to school, not how much money you have, but what you produce. No more publicly traded companies. And then New York will go back to the city of the working people. And not this glamour, you're going to protest all day because you're a day trader or because you're not producing anything and you have all this free time, so you go out and you talk shit. No. So those are the two choices, and honestly, if I had to pick one, I'd say the secession. I'm big on secession. I think the country does need to be broken up, and there are some pretty popular secession movements out there. There's the California secession, and of course there's Texas, and there's Alaska. I don't know how big it is in New York. Probably not that big, but it needs to start growing because people in New York just have to stop thinking of themselves as Americans, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. They are their own country. The United States, all throughout our history, what are we known for? We're known for agrarian society, hard work, factories, middle class, production, entrepreneurship. We're known for just being a hard working society. New York just does not fit that bill anymore. What does a typical New Yorker do? They sit in their cubicles. If they work, mind you, they sit in their cubicles making 6 figures a day to do whatever it is they do. You know, I guess I don't know if it's CSRs or whatever it is they do, whatever jobs are big there. Probably a lot of jobs that are big there, but it's not hard-working jobs is the point I'm getting at. And it's like that's not what this country is founded on. You think people making those fancy old Model Ts, you think they were sitting behind cubicles answering phones, typing on computers? No. Those people were busting their asses putting together the vehicles that more wealthy people drove. But here's the thing I'm getting at is 2 big points. Number one, we need to stop thinking of New York City as American. It's just not. And this video proves it. Secondly, we need to start again having an adult conversation on the topic of secession, how it can happen, how it's possible, how we can do it. Because once we decide that it should be done, all that matters then are the particulars of how we can have a clean break where everybody can be happy with the resources they received, and more importantly, the policies that they can move forward with, whether it be the progressive policies of universal health care, all that, or free market policies that conservatives and libertarians would prefer. So I say we start having that discussion right now. Thanks for listening, guys. God bless.